Margaret Campbell was a woman of many talents and roles, transitioning seamlessly from the glitz and glam of the silent film era to meaningful work in education and spiritual service following the emergence of talkies. Once a shining star in early Hollywood, she appeared in silent films such as Don't Shoot, Children of Divorce, and In the Heart of a Fool. Though her career in silent film wasn't extensively documented, it was significant enough to carve her name into the history of Hollywood's formative years. As the silent film era gave way to talkies, Margaret chose to redirect her talents. She became a speech instructor under the Works Progress Administration, a key initiative of President Franklin D. Roosevelt's New Deal aimed at providing jobs and rebuilding the nation during the Great Depression. Margaret's role as an educator involved helping individuals refine their articulation and finding their voices during a time of widespread economic hardship. Margaret's dedication extended beyond her personal life. She was deeply involved in the Baha'i faith, serving as the secretary of the Spiritual Assembly of Baha'is in Los Angeles. The Baha'i faith's emphasis on unity, peace, and moral growth appeared to resonate deeply with her, influencing her outlook and interactions. Her commitment to these teachings painted a picture of a woman devoted to spiritual growth and community service. In her personal life, Margaret lived modestly with her son Campbell McDonald in a boarding house in Hollywood. Their living arrangements were humble, a single room with separate beds, offering a stark contrast to the glamorous Hollywood image she once embodied. Despite their circumstances, neighbors described the pair as inseparable, often seen engrossed in discussions about literature, philosophy, and science. Their relationship seemed to revolve around mutual intellectual curiosity, creating a unique bond between mother and son. However, beneath this closeness lay a more complex dynamic. Margaret's unwavering devotion to her son was tested by his increasingly obsessive behaviors. Campbell's intense dedication to subjects like economics, psychology, and law became a source of strain. Margaret, concerned about his mental health and overwhelmed by his dependency on her, reportedly threatened to send him to an insane asylum. This threat, though likely born from a place of worry and frustration, added a layer of tension to their relationship. In the quiet corridors of the Hollywood boarding house, the absence of Margaret Campbell went unnoticed for days until the evening of June 28, 1939. Her landlady, Mary Dupree, driven by concern rather than curiosity, decided to check on her tenant. The door to Margaret's room sat slightly ajar, an eerie invitation into the nightmare within. As Miss Dupree stepped inside, she was met with an oppressive silence, broken only by the soft creak of wooden floor under her cautious steps. The room was a modest affair, with two twin beds facing each other and one neatly made. The other was a scene of sheer horror. Margaret Campbell lay prone on her back, her gray hair spread out like a halo of silver against the dark sheets. Her skull had been shattered by a claw hammer, the weapon left discarded beside her, its metal head stained with her blood. The brutality of the attack was evident in the room's disarray. Margaret's clothing was torn, and her body was violated in a way that suggested not just murder, but a deep sadistic rage. Blood was everywhere. Smears on her thighs where discernible fingerprints were later identified, to splatters on the walls and floor, painting a macabre picture of the struggle that had just taken place. The bed, where she lay, was soaked, the mattress a sponge for the blood that had once flowed through her veins. The other bed remained untouched, a stark contrast to the chaos of the scene, suggesting perhaps a premeditated act or a cold detachment from the violence. The investigation revealed more than just physical evidence of the crime. There was a religious tract found beside her, along with a police whistle, hinting at a ritualistic element or perhaps a last futile call for help. The room, once a sanctuary for literature and learning, had become a stage for one of the most heinous acts, where intellectual discussions had given way to violence. Campbell McDonald, Margaret's only child, was living a life marked by intellectual curiosity, emotional fragility, and escalating instability. Born in 1913, Campbell grew up under his mother's watchful eye. Due to a childhood hip injury, he was often sheltered, limiting his interactions with other children and confining him to a world shaped by Margaret's tutoring. This upbringing cultivated his appetite for knowledge, but it also isolated him socially, fostering an obsessive personality. His academic pursuits, which spanned economics, psychology, and law, became all-consuming, straining the already fraught dynamic between mother and son. In 1939, Campbell's life had spiraled into an inward collapse. He had suffered a nervous breakdown years prior due to overwork, and his obsessive study habits hinted at unresolved mental health issues. Margaret, concerned for his well-being, had reportedly threatened to institutionalize him if he didn't ease his restless drive. This threat, though perhaps well-intentioned, became a catalyst for the tragic events that followed. On June 26, 1939, Margaret had attended a late-night Baha'i meeting, returning to their boarding house around 1 a.m. Campbell, as he later recounted, was already in the room, engrossed in his studies. An argument ensued, one of many, over his obsessive habits and deteriorating mental health. Margaret reiterated her threat to send him to an institution, a statement that Campbell claimed lingered in his mind. They eventually retired to their respective twin beds in the moonlit room. However, for Campbell, sleep did not come. In his own words, he had drifted into a dreamlike haze, unable to distinguish reality from imagination. It seems that in the same dreams, I dimly remember hitting Mother with a hammer, he later told investigators. Rising from his bed, he retrieved a small claw hammer. In a state he described as hazy and, like a dream, he struck his mother repeatedly. The blows shattered her skull, and Margaret died instantly. Campbell claimed that Margaret never screamed. He described the act with chilling detachment, stating, "I hit her first on the forehead, and then some more." Afterward, he had washed his bloody hands, changed out of his pajamas, and rifled through Margaret's belongings, taking $10 from her purse. Before leaving, he inexplicably arranged a scene that baffled investigators. A crimson-tipped candle, a religious tract, and a police whistle, and a key were placed at Margaret's body. He later denied any symbolic intent, suggesting that instead his actions were performed in a trance-like state. Campbell left the boarding house at dawn, blending into the waking city. He wandered the streets of Hollywood and eventually traveled to Long Beach by streetcar. During this time, he claimed to feel a sense of relief but couldn't articulate what he was relieved from. For 2 days, Campbell evaded authorities, sleeping in parks and aimlessly traversing the city. On June 28th, he saw a newspaper headline about his mother's murder. It was then that he fully grasped the gravity of his actions. That evening, Campbell surrendered to the Santa Monica police officers, calmly confessing to the crime. "I killed my mother," he admitted, later providing a detailed account of the murder in the hours that followed. He maintained an eerie composure during the investigation, speaking with clarity and precision. Detectives found Campbell's demeanor unsettling. Despite his admission, he had remained poised and cooperative, displaying none of the emotional turmoil typically associated with matricide. When brought back to the boarding house to reenact the crime, he performed the demonstration with almost clinical detachment. He even requested to shave and change into a clean shirt before beginning, remarking, "I feel soiled." During the questioning, Campbell recounted his version of events without hesitation. He described the murder as if it was a surreal memory, stating, "Everything seemed like a dream. It does now, it's all hazy." He expressed no remorse but denied feeling glad about his actions, insisting he was merely relieved. Investigators probed his motives, but Campbell offered no clear explanation. His fractured mental state became a focal point of the case, with police speculating that his actions stemmed from a deep-seated psychological issue. Following his confession, Campbell was subjected to psychiatric evaluation. Authorities suspected he was insane, a conclusion bolstered by his erratic behavior and disjointed recollections. The gruesome details of the crime, coupled with his lack of apparent motive, supported this assessment. Campbell was tried for first-degree murder, but was found to be criminally insane at the time of the crime and deemed unfit to stand trial. He was placed in a state mental institution rather than face conventional justice. Campbell McDonald's greatest fear, ultimately, became his reality. Margaret Campbell's murder shocked the Los Angeles community. Her funeral, attended by over 300 people, was a somber affair. Colleagues and friends remembered her as a woman of intellect and compassion, whose life had been tragically cut short by the very person she had nurtured and protected. Campbell's actions cast a long shadow over her legacy, transforming her story from one of resilience and service to a cautionary tale of mental illness and familial strife.